Okay. Thank you. Welcome back after your break. We have, this is an hour panel session, and then we'll be breaking for lunch. So hang in there for another hour. Okay, so we're off. Thank you so much, Benedetta. Where I don't see you. Oh, maybe getting some coffee. Thank you. Thanks so much for the first keynote. I feel like it's open. the box is open, and now the debate and the discussions have begun. So I'm really excited about that. I also wanted to, in the conference, take the opportunity to showcase and to highlight all of the people who are working at the Bonn Sustainable AI Lab. So yes, I made them stand up and have everyone thank them for all of the efforts and whatnot that they've put into organizing the conference, but I also want to showcase the research that they're doing. And I do this for a couple of different reasons. The first is that this is the last time we're all going to be together on stage, I believe, because PhDs are leaving. Senior researchers are going to be moving on as well in the next couple of years. So I believe this is going to be the last moment we have to do this. So that's one of the reasons for doing this. And another reason is that these are the people who have been inspiring me. I mean, many other people have been inspiring me as well. But I would say we work very closely together, and they've been my inspiration, my support throughout the years. And so I wanted to showcase that, what the privilege that I have of working with these scholars, these researchers, how they debate, how they interact. I wanted you all to see that and how lucky I am. I also want you to hear their voices. Not like they're just their voices, but their voices as researchers, the ideas that they have, the hopes, the fears, the concerns that they have when we're talking about artificial intelligence and sustainable AI. So put my notes down. We're going to wing it. I want to do this in an organic style. I told them I wasn't going to tell them the questions before coming on stage because I don't want them to prepare and to have these, like ready-made answers. So we're going to see how it goes. Yeah. Now, building on what Benedetta did for us this morning, talking about the AI society, and really we were, yes, the environmental consequences played a role, but looking at the social dimension, sustainability in a social dimension with an economic dimension as well. And when I started doing research in sustainable AI, really my focus was on the environmental consideration, the consequences of making artificial intelligence, of the infrastructure of AI. And so I thought it would also be a good opportunity, a good moment for us to take a moment to talk about what sustainable AI actually is, because I think we might have different working definitions. So let's have a moment, let's talk about it. And I want you to hear about what the researchers in the lab consider to be sustainable AI and how the research fits into a framework of sustainable AI. And I will be opening it up for Q&A at the end. So please keep track of your questions because I'll be handing the mics over at a moment. So here we go. Yeah. So like I just said, I want to talk about the definition of sustainable AI. And when I started doing research in this space, am I talking too fast? I'm excited. No? Okay. When I started doing research in this space, I had the two pillars, right? AI for sustainability and the sustainability of AI. And then sometimes we wrote and said, you can only talk about sustainable AI if these two branches come together. And then throughout the course of the years, the definition has broadened. As we have new researchers coming into the lab, we've broadened the scope to accommodate the research pillars, but also to say sustainable AI has to go beyond just environmental consequences. So what I want each of you to do is to answer the question, what does sustainable AI mean for you? How do you define it? I'm thinking structural turn. How do you define it? Yeah. And how does your research fit into your definition? And you can also talk about how you're expanding the concept, broadening this concept, or critiquing the concept of sustainable AI. Where I started talking about it. I'm going to start with Larissa. When you answer, can you say your name and your position at the lab? All right, here we go. I'm going to keep this.
Yes, so my name is Larissa Bolte. I'm a PhD researcher in the Sustainable AI Lab. I've been a PhD researcher for the past 4 years, so I'm almost done. So if I'm being asked about my definition of sustainable AI, well, I think there's basically two different answers to this, and both of them have value, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So one answer about like what sustainable AI is would be concerned with the algorithms themselves, right? So you want to look into AI algorithms, how they're being built, also maybe what kind of material infrastructure goes into them. And then you want to figure out how to make them more sustainable. So that could mean, for example, more energy efficiency. That could mean building them in a different different way that uses, for example, less material resources, building data centers in a way that is more sustainable in the sense of their being more efficient. And this is all analysis at the level of algorithms, basically algorithms and the material infrastructure that goes that supports them, that runs them, basically. But then there's also a second story to be told about just how AI fits into the kinds of societies and structures that we're building. And this is more of a structural perspective. Aimee and I, we've written a paper about this, so this is kind of what I'm referencing about the structural turn. We noticed in sustainable AI literature that there's a different way of talking about AI that is currently emerging in the context of sustainability, and that is really focusing on these things beyond just the algorithm. So how do we integrate AI into our societies? And this can be structural in the sense of, yes, considering the entire life cycle, considering the entire value chain. But then there's also this sometimes, not always, sometimes this story, this political story attached to it. Like, okay, so how do we envision AI in our societies? Taking cue from Benedetta maybe about the techno-solutionism. So how does AI fit into these sustainable societies? What kind of stories do we tell about AI? And this is something that I, in my research, focus on mostly. That was a long answer. Sorry.
No, perfect. Great. So then next, I want to hear from Sophia.
Yes, hi. So my name is Sophia Falk. I'm a PhD candidate at the lab as well in my last year. And my background is in environmental and resource economics. So I look at the sustainability of AI really from an environmental perspective. And as Aimee already hinted at, first we came up with this new perspective of sustainable AI needs both sides. So AI for sustainability can only exist if it's sustainability of AI in place as well. So this was the first proposition that we had. And then I developed it further to look into the sustainability of AI, because if you look at it and you research it, you find a lot of carbon emissions of AI. You look a lot of how much data center energy consumption rises. And this is a so-called carbon tunnel vision that we really focus on. What does AI emit? And we really only look at the use phase or the operational phase of data centers, the inference and the training of AI. And I wondered what else is out there. So we really wanted to see what are the other environmental impacts that we're having. And so we did a life cycle assessment over all life cycle stages, from resource extraction to component manufacturing, then using the AI, like using the GPUs for AI training, and then the disposal of AI. And the reason that we before never looked at this is because it's very hard to quantify and to qualify. So we really looked at carbon and nowadays a little bit at water, because it's units we can measure and units that mean something to us. We can say, this is the amount in tons of carbon, and you can relate that to that many cars, that many airplanes. So you have an understanding what it means to you. With other environmental impact factors, we have an issue that we don't really understand how to put them into context, how to understand what that actually means and for whom does that mean something. So with our life cycle assessment, we could find, in addition to carbon, 15 other environmental impacts that are ocean acidification, human impact, toxicity, cancerous impact, non-cancerous impact, ecosystem toxicity. But if I tell you the units, it means nothing to you. So in the paper, we have a huge discussion section about what does these impact factors mean and who are impacted by them. So we also have this issue of really having this global impact of well understood mechanisms of carbon emissions, but we also have very localized impacts that, first of all, we don't understand and we don't include in our policies, because we really look at the global emissions and not the localized impacts that have impacts on more the majority world and marginalized communities. So we really need to put the focus more out there, and that's what we did with our assessment. So yeah, it's a preprint, it's out there. If you want to know more about it, I could talk forever about it, but yeah, you can find it online.
Great, thank you. So then recapping quickly, the foundations of sustainability, Larissa's focusing on what is the meaning of sustainability, and Sophia was very much focused on the environmental impacts, assessing sustainable AI through an environmental lens. Rosalie, I'd like to hear how you expand on that.
All right, thank you. So my name is Rosalie. I'm a senior researcher at the Sustainable AI Lab, and my research focuses mostly on AI and labor and the different ways in which those two topics connect. And so just as there are hidden environmental costs in AI, which Sophia and other colleagues have focused on, there's also hidden social costs along the entire life cycle of AI. So when we think about, AI, like the production of AI and this life cycle beyond just AI use, there's all these material costs along the way that, like Sophia has highlighted in her research. But at every stage, there's also human labor involved. So when we're mining minerals, when we're creating hardware, building data centers, running data centers, creating data, scraping data, like using data, building models, like every step of the life cycle also involves human labor. And more often than not, those labor practices are precarious, hidden, exploitative, like following neo-colonial patterns. So when we think about the environmental sustainability of AI, that's connected to the social and economic sustainability of AI. And that's in fact how sustainability is usually understood, as having three pillars. So not only an environmental pillar, but also a social and an economic pillar. And you can't think of one of them without also considering the others. That's why it's pillars, there's this little graph that you might know, like the roof would fall if you take one of the pillars away. So I focus on the social and economic sustainability because that's so intimately connected to the environmental sustainability.
Great, thank you. I'm passing it over to Şebnem now to build on Larissa, Sophia, and Rosalie's definitions.
Hello, my name is Şebnem Yardımcı Geyikçi. I'm also a senior research fellow at the IWE. I am heading the research group on AI politics and power. So I will change the question, of course. Because I'm a political scientist, I only respond to what I want. So for me, my research is more on not sustainable AI itself, but the impact of AI on the sustainability of our democracies. And, or more broadly, we can say the political sustainability of AI. And what we do in our group as well, also we discuss about the questions related to AI and democracy, in that now we know if these impacts are left unchecked, it might undermine the very institutions that actually sustain democratic governance. So, and in the end, if we want sustainable practices, we need those institutions. So my focus is on, the argument goes on, like what is its impact on elections, for instance? What is its impact on the public sphere? What are its impact on the institutions as we know them? So I know that you already heard a lot about its impact on elections, like we know the increasing use of micro-targeting, disinformation, deep fakes, all actually are, I would say, a whole new level of manipulation. Although we had political manipulation always, this is like in a much higher degree of pressure and opacity, which makes us concerned about it. I can give examples, but we don't have time, maybe later. Second, public sphere. Now we know that like AI driven personalization and algorithmic amplification actually fosters polarization and epistemic fragmentation. And we need to discuss about the epistemic instability the AI actually introduces into our lives, which has significant impact on the ways in which that we can create consensus within our societies. And finally, as to the institutions, I can add like the fact that like now with AI actually risks eroding institution accountability and public trust. So now we know that like AI started to be used more and more in the public services, in welfare provision, in policing, in immigration services, in healthcare. So all these actually gives us some warning signals that like it reproduces bias, it's opaque black boxes, and it creates new injustices. So in that sense, like like considering all these, what I do as a researcher and what does it mean for me sustainable AI, it means like we need to be concerned about the democratic risks that threaten long-term sustainability of our societies. So if elections lose their legitimacy, if public sphere, let's say, fractures, or if institutions lose trust, then the governance of AI becomes unsustainable. So that is how I'm going to respond.
Great, thank you. So then within the political space, I hand the microphone to José to tell us about your research and how you fit into or shape or mold the definition of sustainable AI.
No, thanks, Aimee. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is José Renato. I am a PhD researcher at the lab. And with regard to the definition of sustainable AI, I think that one thing that we pretty much need to have in mind when we're discussing this topic is not only the whole of materials that Larissa, that Sophia mentioned, that we should pay attention to them, but also look them through the lenses of the territories in which they are located. Because it is within these territories that these materials gain a meaning that is not just that for which they are exploited for, that they are extracted for. And that is why I'm looking into how the AI value chain, the industry as a whole, is impacting indigenous territories in Brazil. It is impacting and extracting the resources which they deem sacred, that they deem important for maintaining their cultures, their epistemologies, and their lives. And it is this that this industry is extracting from them. And beyond this, I think that we also need to question the meaning of sustainability itself. Aimee and I, we are writing a paper now about which includes a discussion on the mythology, and I think that the presentation by Professor Brevini briefly talked about this, the mythology around this, the word sustainability. And 3 weeks ago, I was in Brazil, and I was talking with an indigenous leader called Cacique Roberto, who is leading the resistance movement against the construction of a data center in the state of Ceará. And one thing that he told me was, okay, they're coming with these huge construction works to extract the land of my people, to use the land of my people, to extract the water, and all of the minerals that we have. And what is it that we're gaining from it? So sustainability can become this thing of like just the white man coming to my territory and extracting what rests within it. So yeah, that's why I think that it's crucial that we go beyond the concept per se when we're discussing all of these themes.
Awesome. And Tom, last but certainly not least, please tell us your vision.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm Tom Metcalf. I'm a senior researcher here at the Sustainable AI Lab. And what can I say about sustainability to me? My research tends to be about AI, democracy, education, and academia. And I like to think of sustainability in terms, when we think about AI sustainability, I think we often imagine, we don't all have a shared foundation, but as academics, which most of us are, I think, we imagine standing on a fairly familiar foundation and seeing there's a development of a new technology. Can we intervene in its development in ways to ensure that it is sustainable? I'm very interested in some of the same things Şebnem is interested in, which is then turning back on that foundation of familiarity and thinking maybe it's not as solid as we thought. So of course we can talk about democracy, and I think about that a lot. We can talk about how AI threatens democracy, and I think it does so in some obvious and some not obvious ways. But I think we can also think about how it affects education and academia, right? I think that, again, especially from maybe a European or European descended or minority world perspective, we find ourselves in a context that we think is solid and predictable and reliable, and we can say now, as academics, we're going to critique the development of this technology. But I think a lot of my research is about what is happening to the foundation we're standing on while we watch the development of this new technology. I think we need to think about how AI can benefit education, but of course, as we already heard about in the first keynote, can really threaten some of our traditional values there too.
Great. Okay, so then summarizing the definition, our working definition began with the environmental consequences as sort of the lens through which we were critiquing the development, deployment, and what's the final D? Disposal. Thank you. The disposal of the AI infrastructure. So we began looking through this environmental lens, which then opened up, broadened our perspective, and we started to see other facets that had been overlooked before. So indigenous perspectives in AI. How does looking through the environmental lens now mean these perspectives cannot be ignored? These voices cannot be silenced. So beginning from the environmental lens, then broadened to the social consequences, to the political domain, to the educational sphere as well. But we're also, like most of them said, we're critical or we're reflective on what the term sustainability actually means. And so when we are doing our critical analyses, we're looking at what are the practices that we think should be maintained, as in sustain, to maintain them, but we're also looking at what needs to be repaired, what needs to be transformed. So we don't take this sort of starting point of sustainable AI to say like, yeah, okay, let's look at it and keep going. Yeah, we keep going with this, we keep going with that. It's what needs to change. And I'm paraphrasing work that was done with a former lab member, Taylor Stone, who will be joining us tomorrow. So to give credit to Taylor Stone for that work as well. Okay, so now what I'd like you to answer for the audience is, you've been doing this research for various amounts of time, some longer than others, but what have you seen change in this space that you think is somewhat problematic or troubling? And there could be a bunch of things that you've seen, more of a reliance or the way that it's talked about in the press. There could be 5 different things. Just choose one so that everyone else has something, yeah? And why it's so problematic. So something that you've seen and you're like, this scares me about what's happening and where we could be going, right? We're talking about the future, shaping the future. What do you find scary? And you can freestyle, whoever wants to start.
Well, if I'm to start, I would say one thing that threatens me is how, as we increase the attention on environmental costs of the industry as a whole, how the industry itself is proposing solutions to that. So like when we say, well, data centers consume water, but hey, we have this system here, which is a closed system, and we don't use so much water. Oh, you're saying that we're consuming energy, but hey, our system is the most efficient that we have. It is the most efficient technology that exists. And I've been seeing many policymakers in Brazil making reference to that. And I think that that's very problematic because that might blind us even more to the environmental impacts of the industry.
Interesting. Go ahead.
Could go as a follow-up to that. I think this is going hand in hand with a reduced transparency on their emissions, which is scaring me the most, is that they had these, like Benedetta also said in her talk about Google, they had these greenhouse gas emission goals, and now they just take them off the website sneakily. And also I get a lot of comments saying like, oh, but your report has much higher numbers than the report from Google or Microsoft. I'm like, yeah, surprise. So this is scaring me more, that it's a lot of like intransparent, no reporting, and using their own standards to showcase that they would be green or water neutral, carbon neutral. And then if you read how they assessed it, yeah, in that way you are carbon neutral, but then you don't include any of your business as usual. So I think that's a huge problem. Yeah.
Well, I agree with a lot of the things that have been said, but maybe one thing I would add is maybe, and something that also scares me, is forgetfulness about the debates that we've already had. So you rehash all of these discussions that we've had about other technologies. I mean, AI is not the first technology that's being introduced as like sustainable or saving the planet, anything like that. We had biomimetic technologies, we had nuclear power, we had all of these discussions already. And now it seems like we're just doing it again, and now it's suddenly innovative discourse. So I would actually encourage maybe the people in the audience also to, understand yourself as scholars, like, this sounds a bit pretentious, but like guardians of knowledge. Like, you've seen this before. So can you, like, what kind of knowledge can you bring and then apply and introduce to the AI context and also the sustainable AI context?
Guardians of knowledge.
I like it. A bit much.
Okay, what scares me is just 2 weeks ago, I think maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks. Anyways, Albania has just appointed AI system as a minister. So this scares me. this scares me because like we are coming to a point that like we start to delegate the political responsibility to machines that we cannot hold accountable. So this scares me a lot, for instance, because that actually is against the whole the knowledge notions that I have on how to politics should function. It's against that. So we should have accountable systems, and that's not a machine.
Yeah. So I'm more scared than I was at the beginning of the panel, of course. Being reminded of these things. I guess what I would say kind of scares me is I think we're learning from watching social media, and not just AI technology, but similar technologies. It's easy, again, speaking as an academic, to be in this sort of bubble or parochial world where we think that our values are common across even people in our own societies. A couple of years ago, there was a hurricane that affected the United States, and a politician posted on Twitter what turned out fairly obviously to be a fake image of a girl in a rowboat holding a puppy crying, and saying, "Oh, Joe Biden, let this happen," right? And someone pointed out, this is an AI-generated image, and her response was, I'm paraphrasing, something like, "Well, okay, it might have been, but doesn't it still teach us like a truth about this too?" And I think that, I was also at a panel yesterday too, where a similar subject came up, where I think we're learning that maybe a lot of people don't really care as much as we do about some of these things, like about having true beliefs and about whether, the things we're seeing are accurate. And it's just, we as scholars, we take it as guardians of, of a lot of important things, including knowledge. And we just think it's maybe it's obvious that knowledge and expertise and facts really count. And I think we are starting to see that maybe we can't be as certain of that as we thought. And we're seeing some disturbing evidence that not everyone thinks this way. We already knew that to some degree, but I think it's getting more obvious and maybe worse.
Thanks. So like I said, I work on AI and labor, and I think when I started this project, like 2 years ago or a bit more, was right after the launch of ChatGPT 3, and conversations about AI and labor in the context of automation were still very bit of bigger picture questions, I guess. Like, do we want automation? Like, what does it mean for the meaningfulness of work? And like these kind of like big questions reflecting on the role or value that work has in our lives. And then with ChatGPT and generative AI in general, there was really quickly this like uptake where people are actually using it to like automate like tasks, like part of their jobs. And I feel like now the debate has shifted to kind of like, instead of this bigger picture critical questions, so how are we gonna like co-work with AI? And like we're already accepting that it's becoming part of our jobs, and we're already accepting automation even if it isn't really there yet. And I think that's something that scares me, that we are not critically asking anymore whether we want it in the first place. And it seemed like a lot of debates already kind of surrender to that fact. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I brought you to a dark place on purpose. Yeah, there was a plan for that, to find out what is it that's scaring you, because I'm also worried about all of the things that you mentioned. But I've been, like I said before, if you asked me 5 years ago if I thought there was a chance that there'd be a coalition of EU member states on sustainable AI, I would have said, no, I don't think so. I hope so, but I don't think so. And now these are the conversations that are happening. So I have no choice but to be optimistic and hopeful, because I'm watching things develop. The high-level expert group on AI creating the guidelines for trustworthy AI. This is something that I couldn't have imagined, 10 years ago, but became a reality, to have ethics embedded in the conversation, to see if we can guide responsible development of the technology. So I think there is reason to be hopeful. I am still optimistic. So then, and I want to bring that optimism to the panel and to the audience. If there's one thing that you think needs to be fixed and can be fixed, what would you say it is, and who's responsible for fixing it? You don't all have to answer it, but jump in. I know, it's tough, eh? Can you imagine working with me every day? What's the one thing that should be fixed, and you fix it?
Well, I have the mic, so I can start. Yeah. So the invisible labor that I talked about before, I feel that more and more it's becoming more visible that there's these ghost workers, these like data workers and things like that involved in developing AI, and it's a slow process, but they are forming unions, and those need to be like international. Like there needs to be international policy, and but also international collaboration on the worker side. So yeah, I like more and often when I talk about it, people actually know what I'm talking about. So that's a good sign that the invisible labor is becoming more visible. So.
And you think like for a sustainable future with AI, or for shaping sustainable AI futures, having these labors is a necessary component, would you say? It's like a necessary condition.
Those workers, yeah, like I don't think we're gonna automate the human work that's needed to make AI work. Like,
right. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else who wants to go? And then I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience.
Well, there are many things to be fixed. If I were to choose one, would be to dismantle concentration of corporate power.
Okay. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, I mean, well, antitrust gives a part of the responses, but I think that's crucial to reduce the concentration of like how technological development within the digital realm is thought of nowadays. And also like the values, once again making reference to Professor Bivini's talk, the values that are embedded to it, the ideas, the theories, so taken out of the hands of the ones who have it, distribute more, like their economic power is part of the solution, though not all, of course.
And maybe for the next person to answer, can you weave in how this is unique to AI, if it's possible? I'm riffing off of what you said, you know, like we've had many of these conversations when it comes to sustainability and talking about making the hidden labor visible, creating unions, right? This isn't something new. We've seen this throughout time. So what makes it different when talking about the AI context? Is it the money that's invested? Is it the hype that surrounds it? What would you say?
Okay, that's tough because I was gonna go for like the
okay, never mind.
picture.
Ignore. Just put in brackets what I just said.
I think I can say something to it, but well, the original question was about what would I fix, and I'm not saying this is the most important thing, but one thing that I would like to fix is that these technological visions that we're always encountering about AI, about other technologies, they attach to certain political views and vested interests most of the time. So if I could fix something, it would be to make that connection between different technological visions and certain political positions a bit more visible. And I do think that people are working on it more and more. For example, I work in critical theory, and I see a lot more critical theory of AI, for example. A few years ago, there was nothing. And now, I mean, Rosalie has been working on it, obviously. But apart from that, yeah, there wasn't much, and people are really picking it up. So that's encouraging. How do I attach this to AI? Well, I mean, what would be interesting, and this is more of a research project really, is to figure out like, why is AI the thing that all of these technological visions really attach to? So this is not an answer, but really a research question. Why is AI so amenable to to attach to all of these different technological visions? So yeah, I would like to figure that out.
Şebnem, I want to ping pong to you because politics came in.
Okay. I mean, I'm experienced enough to say that I can't fix anything.
Fair enough.
But
you can try, though. You can try.
But as academics, like our role has, I would say, is to diagnose what's happening now in a clear way, in a rigorous way. Our role is to intervene in public debates. And also our role is to imagine alternatives, and that's what we are trying to do in our lab. And I know there are several people in this room who are trying to contribute these discussions. And I think now living in a political climate wherein we have rise of populism, Trumpism, whatever you call it, it is more and more important for us to take the stage and to try to shape the features of AI.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to the audience unless you have pressing points that you want to add, or they can be saved. I want to turn to the audience. Awesome. Because so when I said in my opening remarks about, building a community, and I also talked about the conference in Norway that I was at where we were really engaging with one another. And so I know it's a little bit weird that we're standing on a stage, but I want to like engage and connect, but I really do actually want to. So we have almost a half an hour to have a discussion now all together. Well, if you have the microphone, but all together. So so let's take some questions. I saw 2 hands go up right away. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Cal. Okay, so we have our first question here with Cal, and then Duke, did you have your hand up? Yeah. Okay. So 1, 2, 3.
Hi, thanks. So it's probably a question for Sophia, actually. So I work with a lot of universities and colleges in the UK. And I think one of the big issues that come up time and time again is how to, I think you spoke to it, sort of alluded to it, is that lack of transparency in the data. So really, how do we overcome that? We're sort of trying to address the embedded emissions. And then a sort of a follow-up to that, I suppose, is what can researchers do to try to apply pressure on big tech to be more transparent with that data?
Great question. Thank you. Yeah, the transparency issue is definitely increasing. Also, when we look at inference, it's even a bigger issue. But what we did is we make all our data open source available. So just to give a push in that direction, that it came to the end that we had to get an A100, like the GPU that revolutionized AI, and we took it apart, we ground it, we burned it, we disassembled it, chemically analyzed it, and then found out what elements are inside. So we really took it to the next level to be like, okay, what is this made of? And all this data we used to do a life cycle assessment, and we will make that openly available. So anyone who's interested in reproducing that research or taking it to another level or using it for inference, anyone can use it. And I think this is what we are researchers here for, to find these new data and share them and make them accessible. And that's an issue that I also had before, is I couldn't find other researchers who gave that much detail, other than carbon emissions data available. And I think that's an issue that we all need to do together, to provide the data. And maybe now the industry will be like, oops, I didn't want you guys to know this. So they will maybe take the lead to then give their perspective and be like, no, this is actually our footprint. So maybe they feel encouraged or forced to back up their to give their own assessment. And
And maybe sort of piggybacking on that, I think too, what Sophia is alluding to is you need visibility of the research, though. So yes, doing the research, but it's also getting it out there. And oddly enough, we need tech for that, right? It's all over LinkedIn, her paper, and people are, she kind of blew up LinkedIn with the results of the paper. So we need the visibility. And didn't you make a movie, or you're going to put together?
Yeah, we filmed the whole process. So in line of, will it blend? Yes, it will. So we're going to make a YouTube video on that.
Yeah, but see, the catchy things, and then people will watch that and start to pay attention and be like, blend. Oh yeah, will it blend? You literally put it in a blender. That, if we can get a public conversation about it, that's how we might be able to start to apply pressure to industry. Just answering that second part. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, just to jump in on this, I also think that we cannot forget also the power of regulation to push this kind of things, of information out there. I mean, there are regulations, for instance, on conflict minerals that are very important to map where minerals are coming from. And this is, for instance, one of the means through which they found out that, for instance, Apple, Alphabet, and Amazon were purchasing gold illegally extracted from indigenous territories in the Amazon. So this is also one thing that I would highlight as extremely important.
Nice. Duke.
Thank you all for already this great start. I was recently talking to a manager, a mentor at my company, and she was telling me the importance of conflict in your work, right? To not just follow what is easy to agree on, but actually look at the things that we find difficulty agreeing on. So I'm curious, what do you as a panel in the lab often disagree on? Or what do we within this conference disagree on? Where are the tension points where we might fight each other? Or why you are fighting each other within the lab? I think there is some tension.
Great question. You answer that.
I guess there's polite disagreement in some aspects. I would say that I'm more always hardcore environmental sustainability and you should be intentional with your use of AI and maybe don't use it, I don't know. And I think then I could hand it over to Tom, who has has a different opinion on this, which is also valid, and I can see fully your arguments. But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. So I think maybe we're on a spectrum about, and I don't know if I'm on one end of it and everyone else is on the other, but maybe we're on a spectrum. I don't think that's exactly true, but on a spectrum of how much we think this is a dangerous technology, but some of us can be really careful and smart about it and use it for good, versus this is a dangerous technology and it's better to not mess with it in the first place, and positions in that spectrum. And so I can take the not the techno-solutionist position, but the non-anti-techno-solutionist position, maybe, in some respects. But again, I've learned a lot, of course, from the other people on the panel, and I'm very persuaded by their criticisms too. So that would be a major, maybe if there is any major polite, friendly disagreement, it's about whether we think there's the foundations of something valuable here, or whether it's very troubling.
If I can give that some more context as well, I totally agree with Tom. A few months ago, we got a subscription to Poe, which is sort of the platform for having all of the different Gen AI models. And the reason why I did that is because I said, it's out there, and so I'll provide the subscription. Everyone can use it to understand what it is that people are talking about, and you can play with it if you want, and you don't have to use it. There was no obligation, and I'm not going to out anyone, but there are people who use it and people who say, absolutely not, I am not touching that. And so we just kind of go about our days knowing who is using it and who isn't. But that's one moment where, it's not a fight, but it's okay. Yeah, it's a point where some of us are going to experiment and try, and others are going to say, no, I am a guardian of knowledge, and I'm not saying that Larissa doesn't use it. I'm just saying has the idea, not going to touch that. But then if I could also to bring others into the discussion. So yes, these are the members of the lab that we're working together with every day, but we also have IWE affiliates. So members of our team who come and stay with us for a year. And from the University of Ghana, we have quite a few researchers coming over. So we have Doji and Modesta over there. Can you raise your hands? And a couple of years ago, they were embedded within the lab for a year, and they've gone back to the University of Ghana, but we bring them over anytime we have a chance because they really enrich our discussions. And in terms of the what do we disagree on, a moment where Modesta spoke up is imprinted, tattooed on my brain, that we were having a conversation about privacy, about fairness, about biases. And Modesta was sitting at the table and she said, this is a luxury that you can talk about ethics in this way. I need to make sure that I can get food on the table for my kids at the end of the day. I'm thinking about how to get through one day, 1 week, and protect my family. I'm not thinking about the data protection agreement and whatnot. And so it wasn't a disagreement, but we've definitely had moments where other people have come into the lab to say, open up your eyes and think about different perspectives. So shout out to Modesta for that. I'm totally losing track. You're next. And then I wrote left, right, Yulia, and then Joshua. Okay.
Okay, nice chess moves. I was really, the panel is incredible. I'm a fan of all of your work. I've been following the work of Sustainable AI Lab for a while now. And we heard about conformity, extractivism, and the logics of the evaluation of human intellect in their territories. And AI sort of inhibits this behavior from its creators and owners who are inherently capitalistic. And we say we live in a democracy, but democracy and capitalism are inherently opposing systems. And the influence of companies, commercial values on democracy is increasing. And this is specific to AI. So my question for all of you is, I guess, people who want to resist and who want to follow, for example, the path of nonconformity, what would an institution for those people look like? And I'm not talking people that have a high level of intellectual, not necessarily skills, but that don't have access to such intellectual development, for example. The people that have to feed their kids but are said that they're going to get replaced by AI. Who can those people turn to for a proactive approach? And I would like to hear how an institution like that would look like for you.
That was a really.
I don't know either. I don't know either. That's why I'm asking. Yeah, I mean, I have been the one who agrees with them all, so no disagreements here. I think this is a great question, and it's a very difficult one to respond. But I can say that like one important point is to what these systems are doing. I think that was also the question that I wanted to raise to Benedetta, that like the Professor Brevini. So there is also we are losing the meaning of what makes us a society. So if these systems promises us to it promises to provide individual responses to individual needs of all of us, yeah. So then what is going to be common to all of us? So how we can create collective action, how we can create new collectiveness within this system which promises individualized solutions. That's a very difficult question to respond. But I would say like we already have certain institutions that are there to do this job. For instance, as a party politics scholar, I would say this might be a role of certain political actors, political parties, to find ways in which to aggregate these demands, to train people, to integrate them into, to find new collectiveness within the society. So that would be my solution, to look at what we already have. Rather than creating new institutions, we might think to maybe to redesign, rethink about the institutions that we already have.
And then who's the we that's doing the rethinking?
We as a society.
But which, so there was a question this morning, societies, making it plural, futures, making it plural. Who is the society? Who is the we?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. Like, this is a part of what I've been trying to answer, actually. And I am, like, maybe trying to give some background. I'm part of a committee in the Brazilian government which deals with data governance. And they, after the issue was brought to the Supreme Court, they introduced representation from civil society. But what I've seen is that I see the members of government within this committee reproducing the same discourses that corporations do, So I think that one crucial challenge that we have is to understand like where and whether there is a frontier between the two of them. Where's the capture of each of these two core state and corporations are playing in different places. And within this, one thing that I ask myself is like, to what degree aren't we failing in bringing the governance of digital technologies to a wider public debate, which is more informed not only with the technocratic view, and I look, as I said, my research is on the impacts of digital tech, of the digital ecosystem as a whole in indigenous territories, and of course, like, it is part of the work to research the movements that happen, and especially in the Kansas countries, on indigenous data sovereignty, indigenous algorithmic sovereignty. And the debate on information among the societies like dates decades and sometimes centuries ago because of how they're exploited by scientists. And so they have, like, in many communities, I'm not going to generalize, but in many communities, they have already their idea of what is it that they want their data to be, how they wanted their data to be processed, And so I wonder if, like, increasing these spaces of discussion with the general public, like, and this is part of academia, of civil society, also to dispute these places, to issue other narratives, and now dealing with what Larissa said, of like bringing the theories that underline all of these measures and bring them to light. I think that this is part of the issue, so that we can increase the capacity of other groups to participate in this conversation and put their views.
Nice, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Yeah. Can you say your name when you ask the question too? Yeah. Building a community.
Hello. So my name is Max, from Sweden, doing a PhD my first year. So super happy to be here. Very excited just to be in this community. One thing I've been struggling a bit with is sort of this, so both sustainability and artificial intelligence are such huge topics, very blurry and confusing, even to me, as literally been doing 1 year trying to understand what this is. So I'm just reflecting on like how can we bring these topics into society, into like the public consciousness, because I feel like there's a very uncritical approach to the current AI paradigm. Like it's just almost accepted as a reality, even though it doesn't necessarily have to be. So like any reflections of like how can we take our expertise and knowledge and just bring it out into society?
Does one of you want to answer quickly, because we have 4 more questions?
So that's a huge issue. Yeah, it's blurry words, artificial intelligence, sustainability. Each of them has like books of definitions, and everyone kind of nitpicks what works for them, and then based on that they do their work. So I think that's a huge issue that you raised there, and there's no real conclusion or answer for that at the moment. But I think already that we are here in a room and we can discuss these words and the terms and how we use them and how they maybe should be used is already a huge step forward, and then contributing to that work. But yeah, I started my PhD 3 years ago, and there were less papers on all of these definitions than now. So it's just booming up, and it's very hard to enter a space that has so much just like noise in there. Yeah.
So I would build on that. Academic publications, of course, that's our wheelhouse, right? That's our niche. That's incredibly important, but also public speaking. So many of us who are out there, we're speaking, for industry, for policymakers. Public speaking is how we get our message beyond the walls of the academic institution. Being on different expert groups. So Lynn and I are working with one of the German federal ministries. So being able to, you say your elevator pitch at every chance that you get. So contributing to the narrative that's building. Don't stop talking about it, essentially. Yeah, which gets really annoying, but so I had left, right, yes. And can you say your name? Oh, sorry, in the blazer with the glasses, her hand is up.
Hi, thank you. Excellent panel. I like the diversity of approaches. My name is Alexandra Georgiou, and I come from the Center for IP and IT Law of KU Leuven in Belgium. And I think my question is mostly concerning 2 issues that were raised by Sophia and José, if I'm not mistaken, on regulation, right? Because we talk about transparency, we're talking about all the numbers getting out, but for whom and by whom? So let me be more precise. Regulation in the EU right now, especially with regard to AI, data centers, the Energy Efficiency Directive, we have all the regulations from the Commission, etc., is super soft. So my question to you, and it's a personal concern that I feel that you might share as well, is this enough? Is this enough for what we're trying to achieve? Because just getting the data out about the energy, the water, all the impacts, is it actually making anything, or is it like leading us towards something? So shouldn't be like a more rigid regulation instead of soft invitations to get the information out? And I think in this regard, I would welcome any type of initiative from the private sector. I don't see, as you mentioned, José, companies reacting to it in a positive manner as something that is suspicious. I love seeing that. I'm just a bit concerned, as I said, about whether we're a bit too soft in our approach.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I share your concern, definitely. We have way too soft laws on environmental sustainability, on measuring it. And the EU AI Act on sustainability of AI is basically a joke. Like, it doesn't matter anything. And it was also like what Aimee said, the OECD report for ethical considerations, that was basically the basis of the EU AI Act. The only ethical approach that was not taken into consideration is sustainability. All the other 6 made it into the AI Act. And I think we definitely agree that there's way too little regulation on this. But what is also is, I don't know who said this, but it's what you can't measure, you can't regulate. So we have to start with measuring it. And it's a start. I think politicians often need some like numbers and be like, okay, how can we check box that we actually achieved something? And you can only do that once you have numbers that can prove that you need to change something or that you did change something. And this is where I personally can start, but of course I'm only one person, so more people need to put more evaluations out there, and then we need to reach policymakers, we need to lobby. I don't know. It's a very big big task. Yeah.
But don't you think this is going to take forever? Because honestly, I do not agree at all with this proverb. I think that we should not wait until this data goes out, because honestly, you have all the intellectual property legislation, all the trade secrets, like we cannot publish this, it's confidential, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is going to take forever, and we should act before this is something to be measured with actual numbers. So making policy, as we said, should not be based on data. We disregard ethics, and ethics cannot be measured, like it's not oranges or apples.
Yes, no, I totally agree. It's just my realistic view of how things have been worked in the past and how I see without a big change things will move forward. And I would love to see it happening the other way around, but this is just not the world that we live in currently. And I wouldn't know how to start like a grassroots movement to make a regulation that holds worldwide, because we have a global supply chain. We have so many different countries that are involved. How would we start? Like, there's no jurisdiction for the whole world to make a AI law, environmental regulation. And this is what we essentially would need. If we regulate now in one state, then the companies move and go to another state and start extracting there or start building their data centers there. That's what's already happening. So we don't really have a good solution for this. This is just where we can start, in my opinion. Yeah, not like it's optimistic, it's just a realistic perspective. Yeah.
But then following on the optimism thread, by being able to articulate, this is what we could have, dreaming, how could we transform it, and saying what we need is a global cooperation when it comes to environmental sustainability. Once you put that idea out there and you continue to talk about it, and you have a European coalition on sustainable AI, and you have China getting involved, because of course, it's a finite number of resources that we have. At a certain point, we are going to have to collaborate and work together on a global level. So put the idea out there, plant the seed, and you never know what will come. Federica, you wanted to say something about this. Is that right? Okay, can you bring the microphone over to Federica? And then afterwards, I have Julia and Joshua. And those are the last two. I'm so sorry. But there'll be so many more moments
I'll
to
just
talk.
put it out there, because there has been a lot about like, what can we do? And as you said, Aimee, is like, well, we can go out and speak and raise awareness and so on. And so in a way, like thinking about Gramsci as well as Professor Benedetta, I know why everyone is like, but the point is, so what is the role that we have? So we've talked about us being intellectuals, guardian of knowledge, academics, but we are also talking about ourselves as activists in a way. And I'm just struggling with that. When we were talking about the use of AI, when, we know that numbers are so complex, and we know that the numbers are not all, and that buying into this kind of policy, evidence-based policy, is a problem in itself, but that's the pragmatic way of doing it. And in all the policy work, you know that you have to just tell things, and the pitch, you talked about the pitch, it's not an academic kind of exploration, is a pitch. And the point is that what are we losing with that? So yes, we need to do something about that. Yes, activism is a good tradition in academia as well. But what is that we lose? Do we lose the fact that we actually think that qualitative work is as important as quantitative work? Do we tend to just buy into that narrative too much? And I think it's, when you raise people's awareness, and when I go there and people are like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize now I have to think when I send an email. It's like, but is it right? Is it right to pass that message that people have kind of individual responsibilities when using whatever tool they have, when actually we know that there are structural problems with it? Is it right? And that's my problems with activism, is that I never know, I'm too nuanced for that sometimes, and I know the kind of what the compromises are. So just like doesn't have to be a question.
No, putting it out there, that's good. Then the microphone goes over to Julia in the turquoise scarf. And then while you're walking, I think also maybe something to say is we're not going to solve everything in this 1 hour panel, but the point is also to put the questions on the table, and we have 3 days to discuss them. And we revisit these things in the techno-solutionism panel that will happen later today and also on Thursday. So we're just getting warmed up.
Thank you so much all for the insights into your work. My question actually goes into the direction of soft law and what Sophia was just talking about the measurability of sustainability and of AI ethics in general. Because as I guess the panel knows, we had last week, our final conference of the project Certified AI. And I think that sustainability is one of the values that can be measured more easily than others. Of course, it's also more pressing, as Aimee just quoted Modesta, thinking about data protection, is a kind of a luxury. So my question would be, because I think 4 years ago at the very first Sustainable AI conference, there were several approaches for measuring at least things like the CO2 emissions and stuff like this. Is there some new research on this? And do you think we can use this in a meaningful way apart from greenwashing?
Heavy. Well, Tabea, can you bring the microphone over to Professor Pierce in the front in the maroon shirt? Who wants to take that question? So let me rephrase. Are there other forms of assessing sustainability beyond carbon emissions? Is that the question? And can we do it in a meaningful way? Okay.
Can I go to the regulation question? Is it okay?
Which one?
Like some of them, like just to comment some stuff
Yeah.
before someone.
You've got 30 seconds to 60 seconds.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, regulation has been watered down a lot. Like you can see that in different jurisdictions. Like here in the EU is like a bizarre. If you look at how the process was with regard to sustainability, it's like bizarre how like in the parliament there were some interesting initiatives and they were all watered down. And this brings me to the discussion of leadership, dominance, sovereignty, that many narratives, many policies are dealing with that are very worrisome because countries are seeing this technology now as something for all of them to have, irrespective of the risks, of the impact. So like we have to tackle that as well. And I think that activism is fundamental for that. We have to see activism not as a bad word within academia, but that we put our ideas out there to try to shape this, how these discourses are like flowing out there. And I still think that international law is a very important aspect in this discussion. Like there are institutions that could think about like possibilities within like conventions and so on, which are very, especially and now it is very difficult. And I get 100% the point of Sophia of like what is the kind of realism that we can have. But I mean, we can see this as a marathon, like thinking about on the long run. Like think what are the ideas that we need to put out so that maybe in a few years they can become hegemonic. Sorry, I think it took more than 3.
That's okay, you're forgiven. Professor Pierce, last question.
So I have a very quick question about purchasing and corruption. So you mentioned the Albania case being something that concerned you, and from the technical side, it's something that actually fills me with great hope. As a technical person, I'm often brought in to consult both for industry and government. And the difference between the two is that industry usually takes my advice, and government definitely has not done so, where it will cost you more money. It will definitely cost more. And when you meet the people that are making the decisions at the government place, the people that they interact with on a daily basis are trying to get something from them. And the sort of the pressure to be corrupt is just incredible. And if you are an elected official and you're not a corrupt, you're a saint. It's amazing. But most of us are people, and they are corrupt. And I'm from the States, so there's some really wonderful examples of just flagrant, blatant corruption that could be taken away by algorithmic thinking from an AI system doing purchasing, just that alone. So I was wondering if maybe you don't have like a more nuanced view on how Albania might actually work out great for all of us.
I mean, that was the excuse that they were saying, like the goal is to actually prevent corruption. So you have an AI minister, a machine, which will not be corrupted. But we already know that these systems are not producing, unbiased, free, fair, objective outcomes. So without being sure about that, like how can we trust that machine will, and like already there are studies in, I think Amsterdam City conducted a huge research on how they can achieve unbiased and reliable AI systems that they can use in the public service. So in the end, they found out that that's not possible. So we are not there yet, maybe in the future. But even then, corruption is part of being human, maybe. Maybe we should keep it. I don't know. I mean,
mic drop.
not that much, but like the certain degree maybe has to be there. It's like I would always favor human instead of a machine, always. But like there are like it can support humans to give decisions, yes, but it cannot replace. It shouldn't, for me, replace humans. So it can support, but not replace it.
Okay, so I leave it at that, and Şebnem's just given me an idea. I want everyone on the panel, you already did yours, the one sentence that you want to leave the audience with, the one sentence of that you want to leave the audience with. Şebnem, you shouldn't replace a human entirely with AI.
So inspired just by that, and maybe finding another moment of a little bit of disagreement among the panel. The one sentence I would say, borrow a concept from economics, to think on the margin, meaning when we're thinking about replacing human work with AI or replacing human choices with AI, we should say not is the AI perfect. We should say was the human perfect also, right? And so, yeah, exactly. So similar to that too, like AI outputs are biased, human outputs are biased too. We should always, human research uses electricity, breathing emits carbon, right? We should always, and this is not to say that machines are always or even usually better, but we should think about the comparison, not the absolute terms.
Thank you. Rosalie, one sentence.
Yeah, well, since he was talking about work, I want to just leave you with this sentence. AI is not automatic. It's human labor that makes AI work.
Be intentional with your use. You go to a supermarket and buy plastic free. Maybe think about your digital choices that can also be plastic free.
Go.
Okay. Shit. Gosh. Now it has blanked on me. Sorry.
I go. Okay. Well, I think in certain contexts, maybe we should talk less about what AI is and rather talk about what we think AI is and does.
I think that we may not forget that the way that AI is so today, it is just a form of reproducing colonialism and capitalism. We have to think beyond that.
Okay, a round of applause for the panel. Thank you. Okay, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, so we are researching together and talking every day, but we're not alone. We also have other support staff with us. So we have Caroline, Laura, our lab manager, Christina Pinsdorf, another senior researcher. We have our affiliates from Ghana, Modesta, Doji, Taylor, who's joining us tomorrow, Tace, shout out to Tace, who just left us a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, so thank you for that. And now we have our lunch break for an hour. We're meeting again at 1:30, listen for the bell. At 1:30, there are talks in here, but then that's when all of the parallel tracks start. So find the room that you have to be in. Thank you again, and have a good lunch.